Hey everybody, it's Terenzo here, just doing another state of the industry type video coming to you. This time we're talking about Tekken 7. What's going on with the Tekken 7 release date? I, like many others, have been waiting quite a while for Tekken 7. In fact, the game was announced first, I believe, I think it was back in like 2014 or something like that, and then of course it hit arcades in 2015. And here it is, the end of 2016, and we still don't have a concrete release date for consoles. Now, just a little history. Tekken is always ported to consoles. I mean, it's just Namco makes too much money not to. I own every single Tekken release, and most of them, because of the time I got into the series, are Greatest Hits Edition. So you know they had to sell a lot of copies if they released a Greatest Hits Edition. And so, of course, Tekken is a big seller. It's a big, beautiful 3D fighting game. It's got lots of characters that even people who aren't really big into the fighting game scene, usually you can show them like Eddie Gordo or Jin Kazama or Kazuya or somebody, and they know who it is. A lot of casual people play it. A lot of hardcore Tekken tourney type folks play it. It's just a big game, and it's been out two or so years in the arcades. It's had its midlife upgrade, which is a tradition they started with Tekken 5. You had vanilla Tekken 5, and then they updated that with Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection, which gave you two new characters and a bunch of new stages, and they revamped a lot of mechanics. And of course, Tekken 6 had Bloodline Rebellion, which was the same thing, except they did it a little different. You see, when Dark Resurrection came out for Tekken 5, the console version had actually already released. So if you wanted to play Dark Resurrection, they released an upgraded version with all that content for PSP, and then there was basically an arcade port available for PS3, which was the new system at that time. So it kind of had the hardware to handle the arcade version of Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection. With Tekken 6 and Bloodline Rebellion, they did something a little different. They waited basically until the arcade had finished its life cycle. So you had Tekken 6, and then you had Tekken 6 Bloodline Rebellion, and then they made a console release just called Tekken 6, which had all the content from all the versions in the arcade and put it out for PS4 and Xbox 360, PS3 and Xbox 360. Sorry. Um, but it seems like, the time is now because we have Tekken 7 released about 2 years ago. Tekken 7, and then the name escapes me. Why does it escape me? But anyway, the Tekken 7 arcade release, which I'll pull up the name of here in a second, the arcade update has been released. It's out there. It's been several months after that. But Fated Retribution, that's it. Tekken 7 Fated Retribution is out. It's been out for a while, and yet there's still no release date. So basically, a few months ago, Namco came out and said, hey, Tekken 7 is going to release on consoles Q1 of 2017, and we're going to tell you the exact date at a later date, kind of thing. Well, here it is, December 7th, my wife's birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Beth. It's now December 7th, and there's still no news. There's been several events that Tekken was present or was showed off, and each one of them has not yielded a release date. In fact, there's another event coming up, a tournament coming up for Tekken 7, a big deal. And everybody was thinking that this will be it. This will be where the release date is revealed. But Katsuhiro Harada, the game's head person, said on his Twitter, everyone just enjoy the tournament for what it is, which a lot of people are taking to mean we're not going to tell you anything. You just come enjoy this tournament. But this has kind of been a running gag for me when I post on GameFAQs. Is like whenever someone says, "Oh, is X event going to be the one where they release the release date?" And I always say, "You better just be ready for a new announcement about a new cash tourney that Namco's doing that's in a country that you can't get to, or it's going to be a combo video for people who've never played Tekken, or a new trailer using footage that they've already shown us. Something disappointing if you're expecting the big release date reveal." So I just wanted to make a quick video and talk about a few of the theories I keep hearing about why why they just won't tell us when the game's coming out. I mean, it's supposedly coming out for PC too, so it looks like they would want to get that out there so that the people who do like to pre-order in full would go and do that, because that's just money for them, and everyone's going to be excited about the release. But there's something going on. I can't put my finger on it, but Namco has never been one to withhold the Tekken release date. I can remember Tekken 5's release date, 10 years ago. We knew when that was coming out like almost a year before it did, right? Um, I remember waiting, checking days off the calendar, waiting for that thing to release, and it finally did, but we knew when. Now they won't even tell us the date. So I wanted to take a few of the theories that I've seen posted around and conjecture, and give my own worthless conjecture on about what I think's going on. The first thing is it canceled? Absolutely not. There's no way that Tekken 7 will not release for consoles. There's just no way. Like I said, every Tekken has released on console. Every single one has made greatest hits and sold a ton of copies. Tekken Tag 2 had a bunch of optional DLC they released. I'm sure they made a bunch of money off that. I mean, it just, there's no way they will not at some point release Tekken 7 for a console. Quality of the port, is it going to look something like Street Fighter 5? I hope not. I doubt they do that. Tekken has always been about the complete home package, so I really doubt that's the case, that it's being canceled or not released or something like that. Tekken 7 will be out for consoles. I have no doubt of that. Namco has assured us of that, so I wouldn't even worry about that. The second thing I keep seeing people mention is Namco's too busy rolling in that money from the arcade. I think this one is quite a lot more plausible. If you look back at like Tekken 4 and Tekken 5, you'll find that they released very soon after their arcade cycle. So, Tekken 5 was released before the expansion, essentially. So, you had Tekken 5 vanilla on consoles, and then they came back, and it was still doing so well in the arcades, they released an expansion called Dark Resurrection, and then they had to port that to other systems so that you could get the full thing. So the arcade definitely makes a lot of money for Namco. If you'll remember, if you're in the U.S. like me, arcades are not that frequent. Unfortunately, they're kind of died out. They're only in specific places like Galloping Ghost, and you might find one at like a bowling alley or something like that. But in Japan, there's still a lot of arcades, and Namco also owns a lot of arcades. So it's not quite the case in America where you have this, where an arcade operator buys a machine and then sets it up, and then after the initial purchase, the seller isn't making any money off of it. In this case, Namco has Namco arcades operating in Asia, so they're making money off that. It's their game and their arcade. People are coming to play their game, so they make a lot of money off of it. And I think the moment that you say, okay, this is it, this is the release date where this is coming out, there's going to be some people that'll say, well, I can just stop going to the arcades. I can go plop $60 or whatever down and get ready for the home console release. And a lot of people will do that. I don't think it's a lot. I think, like most gamers, we're all impatient and they would keep going back to the arcade to play it. But I think there's definitely some sales that they would lose from maybe more casual folks or maybe more frugal people who say, hey, now I have a concrete date when I can buy this. I'm going to take some time off from it and just buy it when it comes out. That kind of thing. Maybe it's the case. I don't know. But the arcade market does no doubt make a lot of money for Namco. You also got to look at all the tournaments and promotionals and appearances that Namco has made with this game. So, I mean, it's that old merchandising. Tekken the t-shirt, Tekken the toilet paper, Tekken the bath towel, all the stuff that they can do to make money off the Tekken brand. And I think some of that fizzles out once you hit console. Because, in this day and age, console ports of arcade games are a rare thing. Used to, you had that a lot. All your big name games like Mortal Kombat and Capcom beat 'em ups and those things would show up at the arcade, have a life cycle. They would port them to console, and so you kind of got a double dip. But it was a good double dip. Everybody was happy about it. You had the game at the arcade, you played it there. Now it's kind of dying out at the arcade. You can go and buy the home version, play it anytime you want for free. So, there's still the version at the arcade, which they can make some money off of. But now that it's dying out, they can get another big chunk of money from the console release. So everybody's happy. Gamers happy. Companies happy. But nowadays, arcade to console releases just don't happen as much because of the dying arcade scene. It just doesn't happen. Tekken and fighting games are kind of the exception. You usually see those come out in arcades because they're very community oriented. They're very challenge other players oriented. So they still thrive in the arcade scene. So, that's kind of the holdover is fighting games. And Tekken, as big as it's become, Namco can make a lot of money off Tekken in the arcade that they couldn't make once it comes out for console. Because the console release is kind of like the last stop of an arcade game. It comes to the console. Everybody who's going to buy it buys it. It probably makes greatest hits and gets a few more sales, and people pick it up here and there. But you're going to have that big spike in sales, and then that's really it. The console release is the end. Now, I think Namco did a great job with other Tekken 5 and keeping it alive after the console release. But if I had to guess, there's a spreadsheet document somewhere at Namco headquarters that that shows that they could have made more money had they held that thing in the arcade for longer. So is Namco riding the wave? Possibly. It could have been the case where they said, "Hey, we know we're going to put this on console, so let's go ahead and announce that so that people will be ready for it." But let's not give an actual date because we want to ride this wave as long as we can. We've got steady income off this thing. We're getting some merchandising things, some appearances. Harada's going around touring, gathering up interest. So why don't we just not give a concrete release date until we reach a certain threshold in our profits? Our profits are starting to downtrend in the arcade. Why don't we do that? And once things start to taper off a little bit, we'll say, hey, the console release date is coming out. And, they may even do the thing where, like, everyone's expecting it to be a long waiting period, but because they rode the wave for so long, they can say, hey, it's coming out next month for home. By the way, that's just my conjecture. I have no source for that. Bella's barking at me because she knows that's conjecture. Tekken 7 will not announce a release date a month before the actual release date. They may, but I don't have any source for that. I'm just guessing that could be something. But ride the wave. Namco could be just riding the arcade wave. It sucks for home fans and people like me who live very far away from the Tekken 7 cabinet, so we can't go and try out the game. But they're a company gonna company. They're gonna do what's best for them. They're gonna make money. Can you really blame them? No, I can't. If we want Namco to stick around, they have to make some money so that they can keep making games we love. So there's that. Another theory that I've heard is that there's going to be a delay, that it's not going to release in Q1 2017, that something is going wrong. I think this one's possible. Just conjecture for me at this point. But we could have a situation like Persona 5. For the greater part of the year, the Persona team and Atlas swore up and down that Persona 5 would have a worldwide release by the end of 2015. It was coming. There was no delay. Everything is fine. Do not panic. Everything is okay. Until, they held that meeting when they said, oh, well, here's a bunch of new footage, and the game's new release date is several months after we said it was originally coming out. If you'll know, Persona 5 actually ended up releasing in September 2016 in Japan, and was announced for Valentine's Day 2017 in America. But even that got delayed. They just they did what they always do, and they announced some new features, and then said, oh, by the way, the game's delayed again. Sorry, law. But could that be what's happening with Tekken? Possible. I applaud Namco on your Tekken ports, even with the thing that happened with 5, where, Tekken 5 was not the definitive version of Tekken 5 because they released, Dark Resurrection later on. You still get a very, very complete home package purchase when you buy a Tekken game. You're going to get beautiful CGI intros, outros for all the characters in CGI. Now they've started giving every character a story mode where they have a little intro storyboard, they have an outro. Usually there is some type of adventure or story mode in there. Starting with Tekken 3, you had Tekken Force, and Tekken 4. You had Devil Within in 5. You had the arcade versions of Tekken 1, 2, 3, and Starblade, all in the home port. Tekken 6 had a beat-em-up mode inside it. Tekken Tag Tournament 2 had a Fight Lab thing, which was kind of but given that you had over 60 characters and CGI for each one of them and all those other modes, we'll excuse that. I just feel like you're going to get something good. Like, when this comes out, it's going to be good, hopefully. You might want to wait for reviews if you're not a diehard Tekken person. But just Namco has a great track history with their home ports of Tekken. So maybe it's taking a little longer than they expected. This time they've kind of hinted that they're going the Mortal Kombat X, story NetherRealm type story mode for fighting game, which right now is probably the best approach for a story mode in a fighting game that we have is the way that NetherRealm does it. And so Namco has announced they're kind of doing something like that, and it's going to be you're going to have two paths. You can pick Heihachi or you can pick Akuma, something like that in the style of the Mortal Kombat X type story mode. And it's their first time doing one like that. So maybe, just maybe, it's taking a little longer than they expected. Um, Maybe there's some funniness with how the storylines branch out and how interactions between the two storylines work, and what's going to be canon, what's not. How does the mechanics of it work? They've never done it before. Maybe they're having trouble with it. Who knows? That's just my conjecture. But it's possible it's taking longer than it's expected. Um, Perhaps they had intended to reveal a release date sooner, but they said, "Hey, if we want to implement these features right, we're gonna have to make sure we take enough time." And in today's climate, especially, how angry the internet gets about delays and game announcements that are not good, and announcements about features that are being taken out and things like that. They're playing this very safe. I think if this is the case, they know that if they say, okay, Tekken is coming out February 25th, just February 25th, arbitrary date. It's coming out February 25th, and then they have to come back February 1st or January 15th and say, well, actually, it's going to be April, then oh my goodness, the firestorm on the internet, and they don't want that. So I think that they're just playing it safe and saying, okay, we'll just say Q1 2017 because it shouldn't honestly take us any longer than that. We've got a big window. If it's ready sooner, it's ready sooner. If it's not, we've got that full cushion that we can put the game out in and not have to announce a delay. Because I almost feel like the internet is more forgiving if it's going to be a long time. Like if you announce, like, Death Stranding is coming out, in something like 2 or 3 years, but everybody's still stoked for it. But I feel like even with that coming out in 2019, if they were to wait till mid 2018 and say, oh, by the way, it's actually coming out in 2020, it's going to take us longer than we thought, a lot of people would be very disappointed. A lot of less mature people online would be furious and screaming about how they aren't going to buy the game and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Maybe Namco's just playing it safe with their release date. There's obviously something going on now. Whether it's riding the arcade wave of revenue or it's just taking them longer than they expected, I think it's both okay. Is it annoying? Yes. I would like to know when it's coming out, but either way, when it's coming out, it's coming out. You're going to be able to purchase it regardless. You're really at their mercy, so it's best just not to get too worked up about it. But is there something going on? Absolutely. There's definitely a reason for it. Harada has a very active Twitter, and he gets tons of people a day asking when it's releasing or telling him to release it. And people on Tekken's Facebook ask him, when it's coming out, when it's releasing. They know. I'm very certain that they know that people are getting a little bit antsy and want to know when Tekken 7's coming out. And I want to know too. But it's all right. I think it's going to come out eventually. Is it kind of annoying that Namco has kind of ignored console users? Yeah, it feels like it, but remember, a company's going to company. I've seen a lot of talk about how Namco does not care about the U.S. market, and sometimes it certainly feels that way, but you got to remember, it's because they make so much money off riding that arcade wave over in Asia and places where arcade fighting scenes are still big. The day that we managed to revive arcade fighting scenes in America, you better believe that Tekken 7 will be here, because companies, they go where they make money, and I just do not see them missing out on that opportunity. Just like they're not going to miss out on a console release, they're going to release the game on console. It's just a matter of when it's best for them and when it's done, which is a good thing because you want your game to be a complete product. I would rather wait in the dark for a little longer than have a catastrophe like Tekken. I mean, not Tekken. Street Fighter V's release. That thing. I do not have any respect for the way Capcom released that game. I've got a buddy that's really big in Street Fighter, and he tells me that there's still no arcade mode in the game. You know how many months has it been since Street Fighter 5 is released, and they promised all this stuff. I think they finally got the story mode put in, but there's no arcade mode. You can't really. I think you can go into practice and fight against a CPU opponent, but I mean, if you just want to do a gauntlet of like 10 CPU opponents, you can't do that. You know, because there's no arcade mode in the game, and this is ridiculous. Why would you release a game in that? Yeah, we're getting off topic. Regardless, I don't think Tekken 7 has been canceled. I think Namco is, they very much know what they're doing, either with the arcade market or the game is taking longer than they expected. And that is okay. Either way, the game will release on consoles. Hopefully, they'll throw some bonuses in there. I know for one thing, Lee Chaolan's going to be in the console game, which is cool. I'm glad that they put some fan favorites back in there, and I'm sure that if there is a delay, they'll do the Atlas Persona thing and say, hey, the game's delayed, but we're putting in Kunimitsu or we're putting in whoever. Anyway, this has been another Terensu incoherent ramble for 21 minutes now about where I think Tekken 7 is and when it's coming out. If I had to guess, I'm going to say March. And let me get the calendar so I can pick a Tuesday because these things always come out on Tuesday. If I had to guess, I'm going to say March 21st. That is my guess for when Tekken 7 will release. I could be wrong. That is just a guess. Anyway, this is Terensu signing out. Have a great evening.